Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss some channel news, but which also is going to take in the political landscape in YouTube in general, and presumably has implications for UK politics on social media more generally, and maybe even the general public, at least in the short term. Because going back years, when I was still growing the channel with a few thousand subscribers, I would regularly point out that at some point in the future, politics is going to normalise. I would expect a drop in views on this channel. So a couple of months after the election might be a good time to review this. Only something a bit surprising happened, or it was surprising to me anyway. I did not anticipate this. So before I go over my little detective work this weekend, I should also point out each year YouTube gives some one-to-one support for some content creators in the political sphere, presumably other types of channel as well. But this year I'm getting that support for political content, and I get monthly meetings to discuss things with someone at YouTube who does a sort of deep dive with my channel. And in last month's meeting, I was told that I'd booked the trend somewhat for political channels, because whereas political channels in general had seen a hit to numbers. Now, I will point out, you do generally get a hit to numbers in August, generally, and then in September. But I mean, sort of more so than that. Mine had remained fairly robust. Now, there are possible reasons why I think this might be the case, but never mind that now. What I did since that meeting was I noticed 3 weeks ago there was a noticeable drop in numbers on my channel. It has continued for the last 3 weeks, and over the past week has become a bit more pronounced. Now, not to worry, I've said before that my numbers would have to properly tank before it became a viability issue. This is purely an academic interest, not a warning light for the channel. Although I will fear for anyone whose channel was just about viable, because this is not going to be a good time for them. Because you may be forgiven for thinking, well, you know, that might kind of make sense, doesn't it, Phil? I'm pro-Labour. It's probably fair to say that Labour have not exactly been parading their shinier credentials in recent weeks. In fact, as I mentioned before, Starmer seems to be making something of a virtue out of doing controversial things without even throwing some more crowd-pleasing elements to spin the news cycle. In addition, with the ejection of the Tories from government and most of their MPs from Parliament, sources of the spicier news stories a bit more scarce. No government scandals, other than ones the media are making up about clothes, and even Tory infighting seems to be a little bit under wraps while the leadership contest is underway. Reform UK are providing some intrigue, but there's only 5 of them and only about 3 of them really say very much. So with a government in place that I broadly approve of and a lack of political skullduggery going on, you may imagine that my type of content is, of course, going to suffer. And I'm sure those are definitely factors. Only another one has sprung up to muddy the waters. And rather than jump to conclusions, I wanted to do a bit of investigating. So I'll go over some of what I did. There was a lot more to it as well. But I initially used a tool that's in the YouTube analytics to find out, okay, so what sort of political content is doing well at the moment? All of the video suggestions they weren't just right-wing, they were specifically far right-wing talking points. Like, all of them were pretty strongly aligned with Reform UK type views. What surprised me was that it was all of these suggestions were centered on that. There was no sort of more traditional conservative right-wing views popping up. There was no suggestions of content which is left-wing but anti-Labour, because there's plenty of that about as well. So I did some digging. I looked at the views and uploads across a range of channels focusing on British politics. Obviously, I can't get detailed analytical data on other people's channels like I can mine, but there's stuff publicly available through tools like Social Blade and vidIQ. So I got a load of channels that covered the full range of the political spectrum, as well as neutral content, as well as very different positions in terms of party politics. And I found they were all down. Not just down compared to the start of summer, that is normal. Like I say, you usually get a drop in views over August, and actually it drops further in September, which has always seemed a weird one to me. But a big drop, and also a drop compared to those same channels' views in last August and September up to this point. And there was something else. I compared my impressions data for April and then the last 30 days, so a similar, well, identical period of time. Now, impressions are when YouTube puts your videos on someone's feed or recommended videos, right? It's when they dangle the thumbnail in front of someone. The figures for impressions and views from impressions, They were slightly down in the last 30 days compared to last April, but not by very much. Not by anywhere near the same proportion that views were down, which means that the drop in views is primarily from searchers. Not as many people are searching for this kind of content. And although I can't see that level of detail in other people's channels, I'm going to guess the same would apply to them if they dug into it. So I had my latest meeting today and I pointed out some of what I found and asked if there is something being noticed. Because along with a few other things, which I won't bore you with, I was sort of coming to the conclusion, I just think there's a load fewer viewers available. It's not just that I'm picking the wrong content or my position is just now out of kilter. It's there seem to be actually fewer people out there to fish, so to speak. And indeed, this was the case. My contact at YouTube said, yeah, they'd benchmarked my channel with a dozen others, and they didn't say which ones, of course, and found this same drop, and that it was essentially people being excited by the election, then the riots, and now exhausted by it all. So effectively, there are some political viewers who have taken a step back for the time being. Now, there are good and bad things to sort of know in this when it comes to channel planning. The good thing, I suppose, is that the size of the drop is not down to the nature of my content juxtaposed with the new nature of the government, or at least not entirely down to that. It might still be a factor. It's quite hard to tell because remember, the drop in views has only been the last few weeks, but Labour have been in power for like the last 10 weeks now. And it's impossible to separate one factor out from the other at the moment. It would also suggest that I'm probably not going to see a further decline, which is always good, but time will tell on that one. But the bad news is that there are now two huge unknowns, and I have no way of investigating them. The first unknown is how much is the drop down to exhausted viewers who will be back when they've cleansed their palate in the real world or with other content, you know, cat videos or something. And how much of it is down to people who they're lost to long term to political content, or at least my type of political content, now that politics is a bit more normal. The second unknown, in terms of those who will be back, is how long will that take? A few weeks, a few months, a few years? And the answers to both would be useful in informing what I do with the channel over the next year. Because I do have plans. I'd said before, I'd been thinking way ahead of this election because I'd anticipated this. It's just I hadn't anticipated this factor. I hadn't considered the fact that after, because I don't get exhausted after major spikes in political interest. I hadn't considered that other people would, right? That being said, there was something I'd discussed myself and two other bits of advice from my YouTube meeting, which I'll be looking at in the short term. I'll do another update video if and when I'm ready to implement anything major. Not quite ready yet. Actually, maybe when I hit 200,000 subscribers, that could be a good time because that might happen towards the end of the year. Or maybe I will decide to do something for them. We'll see. But there might be wider implications than just this channel here. So I've already suggested that what's happening on my channel, I know is happening across news and politics channels in general, YouTube have told me. And also I sort of found that out from my own research. And it also occurs to me, so if we've got evidence of a significant number of people being exhausted by politics in terms of YouTube content, the same probably applies on other social media platforms. And it might even suggest that the wider public have the same feeling. Now that has very interesting implications for the way Labour are going about their business at the moment, because I've been tearing my hair out to a certain extent. And it's now making me wonder if the reason Labour are full on doom and gloom at the moment is that partly down to the fact that maybe their researchers are seeing the same phenomenon amongst the general public. Is there a significant chunk of the general public who are worn out at the moment, and maybe anything being reported in the news right now is having less cut through than it would ordinarily? That would be interesting to find out, although again I have no idea how I would investigate that either. I have YouTube data, that's about it. But there we are, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe as well. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.